I never imagined that a poor girl could bring a millionaire CEO's daughter back to life. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The ground shook beneath me as I watched the world shift and sway, swallowing my naive dreams whole. I blinked against the chaos, barely breathing, my heart racing as sirens wailed in the distance. There she was, Elise Harrington, gorgeous, privileged, the girl who seemed to float above the rest of us. Her laughter danced delicately on the wind, while her world shimmered with gold. And there I was, Clara Martin, buried in overdue bills, threadbare jeans, everyday survival. I would have never thought my life could ever intersect with hers until everything changed. Elise loved life. She had everything: wealth, friends, freedom, but still, she felt trapped in her golden cage, and I felt it too. I had watched her from a distance through the glass walls of her father's tower, the enormity of the CEO empire lurking high above the ground. One day, I dared to get close, just to catch a glimpse of the girl whose life seemed oh so enviable. "You've got to reach for the stars, Clara," she once said, her eyes sparkling with an allure I never understood until that fateful night. A party, bright lights, clinking glasses, a masquerade of our lives, but chaos doesn't always take the form of sirens, sometimes it whispers. I remember the moment it shifted. The party, laughter, life, then a single scream. Time froze. My heart stopped as I watched her collapse, body crumpling to the polished floor like a discarded doll. Silence. The kind that wraps around your throat, makes it hard to breathe. Eyes turned, shocked gasps rippled through the crowd. I didn't hesitate. Panic ignited something deep in me. I pushed through the throng, my trembling hands brushing against silk and satin as I reached her. The world faded, it was just us in that moment. Her skin was cold, pale against the opulence surrounding us. I pressed my ear to her chest, praying for the sound of a heartbeat. Nothing. My breath caught, a lump rising in my throat, desperation clawing at me. Suddenly, the enormity of the moment hit. I could feel the eyes, the whispers. "Who does she think she is?" They rolled through the air, cruel and barbed. But I didn't care. I heard another scream, and then something within me snapped at I in that breathless moment. I didn't just want to save her, I felt the weight of a million lost hopes resting on my shoulders. I leaned down, whispered desperate words: encouragement, love, pain, and everything I could muster into that moment. I squeezed her hand tightly, connecting our worlds, fragile and fierce. My heart raced louder than the chaos around us, then nothing. Time stretched. I felt utterly powerless, vulnerable, yet I couldn't pull away. Would she wake? Would those icy depths of despair pull her further down? My breath hung in the air like fragile glass, waiting to shatter, but then, just when I thought our chance was slipping away, something flickered. Her eyelids fluttered. What was happening? It was more than hope, it was magic. The murmurs of the crowd faded into a distant hum. I couldn't let go. Not now. Not ever. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness clung to the edges of consciousness, wrapping around me like a thick fog. I wasn't sure how long I had been in that strange limbo, but the moment I felt someone's hand squeeze mine, a rush of warmth enveloped me. It pulled me back, then thrust me up front, back into a world that was spinning too fast. "Stay with me, Elise," I urged, my voice barely above a whisper. The crowd was a kaleidoscope of strangers, caught between horror and fascination. In that dense fog, I could vaguely hear murmurs cascading over each other. Is she dead? What happened to her? Who is that girl? I caught snippets of laughter punctuated by dread as if the world around us had transformed from playful balloons into bursts of sharp glass, but this was no time for self-doubt or worry about judgment. I clung to Elisa's hand, feeling the flicker of life beneath my touch, a determined heartbeat despite the chaos around us. I was an anchor, straining against the current pulling her down. As if sensing my struggle, a gentle touch grazed my shoulder. I turned to see Vanessa, the bubbly party planner who had hoped for a whirlwind of excitement that evening. Her face was pale, breath coming in shallow gasps. "What do I do?" she stuttered, panic cavorting in her eyes. "You can call an ambulance," I replied, my voice steady, bolstered by the strength brewing in me. I felt something swell between us, an unexpected partnership that defied the invisible barriers erected by wealth and reputation. It was beautiful in its simplicity. This was a world that had always spun for the elite, yet here we were, a testament that not all hope is lost in a dark place. Elise stirred again, and I felt a warmth prick at my eyes, a painful swell of emotion coiling within me. Perhaps this was her second chance, a chance we didn't know we both needed until this moment. Vanessa rushed off, and I remained, fiercely invoking every shred of courage I possessed. "Come on, Elise. You can fight this. I will fight with you. Just hold on." My voice cracked slightly, raw and real, echoing through the cavernous hall, each word a tether binding us tighter together, but the moment hung heavy, challenge etched on Elisa's pale face. Her eyelids fluttered as if caught between realms, battling against the very weight of her existence. It hit me then, painfully clear, for every rich daughter who seemed to have it all, there might also dwell a deeper longing, an abyss of isolation that could swallow her whole. She had never simply floated above life, and neither had I, each of us tethered by invisible chains that I sensed a shift within me, a blooming resilience, as she shifted her fingers ever so slightly, responding to a world more nurturing than one drenched in affluence. "Clara," she whispered, her voice a ghost of its usual vibrancy, fragile yet present. "Right here," I replied, willing my heart to sink with her faltering breath. I realized in that moment, drawn by the fierce tenderness rushing in my veins, what brought us together was more than it appeared. It was a daring, raw connection fueled by vulnerability, a spark lighting up the dark void we both inhabited, rich or poor. Then, as sirens wailed close, cutting through the tension like a knife, the scene shifted again. The doors flew open, and a rush of medical personnel poured in, hurry communicated through their purposeful strides. Suddenly, it was as if a sense of dread settled over the air. They pushed through the crowd in a flurry with determination glistening in their eyes, urgency taking hold like a living creature. "Step back!" one shouted, and the crowd reluctantly retreated, yet I refused to leave Elisa's side. I needed her to know she was not alone. As they worked, I caught glimpses of the faces filled with confusion and uncertainty, particularly one that stood out, a guy with sharp features and eyes that mirrored Elisa's. It was then it hit me, I recognized him from old photographs. He was Liam Harrington, her brother. The shock radiated through me like a typhoon, pulling at my heart. I remembered Elisa's whispers about him, their childhood games, known and unloved. But how did I forget that he had been so close all along? Seeing him now cracked something open inside of me. Would he care? What would he think of me, the girl desperately clutching his sister's lifeline? Nausea gripped my stomach when I saw his gaze catch mine, and his expression froze, morphing from shock to raw, unfiltered pain. "Get away from her!" he shouted, his voice strained, bearing the weight of a family's secrets, born from pressures I could hardly comprehend. Suddenly, I felt like an intruder in this perfectly polished world, the voice in my head screaming for me to step back, yet my heart beat stubbornly forward. I wouldn't leave her. Not now, not ever. Liam. No, please. I pleaded as the stirrings of defiance began to ignite within me. A storm brewed, uncertainty intersecting with fierce determination. I can help her. He took another step, a tangled mix of fury and fear painting his features. I was terrified and exhilarated. I wanted to tell him about our connection, how life had merged our paths in a way neither of us could have anticipated, and yet, there was no time for words. The fear of losing Elise loomed immeasurably larger than everything else. And just then, as tension soared, something deep inside the chaos whispered a truth. I was not merely a girl from the other side of broken dreams, I was becoming a part of something larger than my fears. It was painfully clear, as sirens echoed, hearts raced, and hope flickered dimly in the shadows, choices had consequences that could shatter our worlds even further. The cliff we were on was dizzying, and the abyss loomed. As I dared to face it, everything around us blurred. What did it mean to save someone who had lived in a cage of gold? If Elise was found once more on the precipice between light and dark, would I still be the one to catch her? The frantic white lights of the ambulance flickered like stars against a sky drenched in uncertainty. Surrounding us, paramedics moved in choreographed precision, their movements a blur as they bypassed my lingering presence. My heart raced, it felt as if the world was spinning faster, and yet time had slowed to a crawl. "Stay with me, Elise," I urged again, feeling her cooling fingers begin to slip away from my grasp. It was a moment steeped in anguish, the breath of life hanging by a fragile thread, teetering on the edge. "Why did you have to come to this party?" Liam's voice was a low growl, laced with panic and accusation. His sharp features sharpened in the harsh light, and I could see the flicker of anguish in his eyes. I wanted desperately to explain how Elise and I had found ourselves connected, how her laughter had once shrouded me in warmth during the darkest nights of my own life. "Liam, I'm trying to help," I implored, fighting against the swell of emotions threatening to drown me. "You need to trust me." But trust was a currency neither of us could afford right now. His gaze was fierce, anchored by the visceral need to protect, to shield Elise from the very chaos that bound us together. I could feel her pulse weakening, a fragile wisp of life choking on its own despair. "We need to get her out of here, now." One of the medics shouted over the chaos, and a gurney slid hastily into view, its metallic sheen reflecting flashes of anxiety. I watched as they lifted Elise, cradling her almost reverently. "Clara." Vanessa reappeared, breathless with urgency, her eyes wide with terror. "I don't know what's happening with Elise, but we can't just. Are you coming with us?" One of the medics tossed her question towards me as they continued to work. My heart clenched. How could I allow fear to dictate my choice when every fiber of my being screamed for me to stay by Elise's side? "I'm going," I asserted, the weight of determination pushing me forward. With each step towards the ambulance, I locked eyes with Liam once more. The raw hurt etched into his face served as an urgent reminder we were both standing at a precipice, shackled by our fears, but drawn by an invisible thread of hope. "Get in the back if you think you can help," he barked at me, concern flickering under his bravado as he stepped aside. It was the first thread of cooperation between us, compelled by the undeniable truth that we were in this together, whether we liked it or not. That we climbed into the narrow back of the ambulance, the cacophony of sterile sounds mingling with the weight of trepidation. Elise lay sprawled on the gurney, her color fading like the last remnants of dusk surrendering to the creeping shadows of night. "What's her status?" The medic's voice cut through the din, focusing all of our attention on Elise's still form. Unresponsive, Liam stated, a pronounced edge of agony in his tone. "She needs CPR isn't helping. We need to address the breathing." The medic snapped back, and I watched helplessly as they continued their frantic efforts. I felt like a spectator in the theater of despair, wanting to leap into action, yet held back by the confines of my own helplessness. "Clara," a faint whisper broke through the chaos. I turned quickly to see Elise's eyes fluttering open, momentarily disoriented. The world around us blurred, the medical machinery's beeping a grim symphony underscoring the fragile beauty of her heartbeat. "Stay please." "Always," I promised, moving closer, my heart swelling with anguish and hope playing tug-of-war in my chest. But Liam's voice cut through my moment of solace. "You're a distraction." He seethed, though his anger felt more like a protective reflex, a shield crafted to steer me away from the heartache that enveloped him. "You shouldn't even be here." "What do you want me to do?" I countered, feeling an unyielding surge of emotion being challenged by his defensive stance. "I want to save her just as much as you do." We can't afford to let our differences interfere with what really matters. The tension between us crackled, each syllable a season of pain, laced with unspoken words. But beneath the anger, I spotted the fear, a helplessness that lay bare like a wound, an echo of my own turmoil. Another tremor pulsed through the ambulance, and Elise convulsed slightly, her eyes widening with panic. In that fleeting instant, her gaze caught mine, and I could feel her fear mingling with my own. It took my breath away. I wasn't merely struggling against my emotions, I was thrust into a whirlwind of responsibility that was larger than both of us. "Clara!" A voice cut through, and I glanced towards Liam, who looked paler than before. She's not responding. It hit me then, this was more than just a race against time, it was a countdown against everything we had once taken for granted, a reminder that wealth and privilege could not shield us from the cruelties of fate. The tears I had held back surged to the surface. I couldn't be the anchor I wanted to be if I let fear dictate my movements. "Don't give up, Elise," I cried, reaching for her hand, willing her to feel life again. "You're stronger than this, and we're all here for you. Don't you dare quit." But beneath the fog of desperation, uncertainty loomed over us like an ominous cloud, thickening again and again. What if this was where hope spiraled into oblivion? I couldn't shake the chilling thought, glancing at Liam, whose gaze mirrored the haunting specter of doubt, and in that breathless moment, a familiar face appeared at the ambulance door. It was someone from the past, someone once treasured but now shrouded in shadows. My heart plummeted. This revelation could upend everything. Would they bring solace or destruction to our already fractured alliance? The ambulance lurched forward, and the chaos of our reality spun off the charts. What truth lay beneath the surface, hidden away like a desperate secret? As Elisa's eyes fluttered once more, the night felt unforgiving as we hurtled into the unknown, uncertainty and dread intertwined within our midst. Each heartbeat echoing one pressing question: what would we lose next? The sirens wailed and the tires screeched against the pavement, a harrowing khaki blanket thrown over the routine of nights unexpected. Within the confines of the ambulance, each breath felt laborious, caught between fear and the frayed threads of hope that clung to our collective hearts. The darkness loomed not merely in the sterile compartment but also beyond, a palpable presence drawing us deeper into despair. "Stay with us, Elise," the medic urged, his voice steady, though his brow glistened with sweat. I gripped her hand tighter, as if my warmth alone could tether her to this world. Yet as I looked into Elise's fading gaze, I recognized the flicker of consciousness waning, a candle dwindling under the relentless winds of fate. Suddenly, the doors burst open, and in rushed a breath of cold air along with a figure I hadn't anticipated: Clara's twin brother, James. His eyes widened in shock, momentarily taken aback by the scene. The last time I had seen him, he was holed up in his college dorm, tangled in the chaos of his own life, living miles away from our troubles. "What the hell happened?" he demanded, his voice taut with strain. Emma turned pale beside me, struggling to reconcile the past with the present. The ties that had once bound our lives were now frayed, tangled within a heart-stopping crisis. "James, we need help," I called out desperately, feeling a new wave of urgency. "Elise, she's unresponsive. We can't lose her." His demeanor shifted, and his instinctual need to protect those he cherished kicked in. "I'll call Mom," he said, tone low as if acknowledging just how devastating it could be. He set about making the call, urgency etched onto his features. "Perhaps it'll help," Emma murmured to me, her voice barely above a whisper. I turned to her, baffled by the unusual softness in her tone. A moment of calm washed over me, igniting the sensation of solidarity amidst the chaos. In that fleeting second, the heartbreak that had threatened to engulf us seemed to pause, allowing a sliver of connection to shine through. But before I could fully embrace this newfound sense of unity, the medic's voice boomed in the small space. "We have a pulse. It's faint, but she's still with us." Relief washed over me momentarily, sweeping away the icy grip of fear. But just as quickly, I realized that this was far from over. The joy I felt was fleeting, a mere shadow, for the next challenge was mounting like the high tide pressing upon a fragile shore. In the dim ambience of the ambulance, I locked eyes with Liam again. His face was streaked with a climax of emotions, anguish meshed with hope, and yet a desperation that mirrored my own. As we shared that moment, an unspoken revelation passed between us, threading its way through the tumult. No longer enemies but fearful allies in the fight to save someone we both loved. Clara had always been the heart that brought us together, the connection binding us beneath layers of history and grief. And losing her felt like watching the last star extinguish in a swirling sky, an irreversible consequence of choices both large and small. Suddenly the buzzing of the medical equipment jolted me back. I glanced out the small window of the ambulance, the city lights flickering by like the embers of despair mingling with the stars I had clung to so tightly. Clara. James' voice broke through the protocol of care as he turned sharply, eyes wide. You won't believe who's outside. But he was interrupted as the ambulance jolted to a stop, the sudden halt reverberating through my veins. What is it? I cried, and as the doors swung open again, a deep breath caught in my throat. A wave of memories surged forth, faces once familiar contorted into reflections of longing. The elegant figure standing outside was none other than my estranged mother, the very person I thought had washed her hands of our family. What are you doing here? I blurted out, heart racing with disbelief. The warmth of emergency glowed starkly against the cold backdraft of disgrace. Clara, darling, please. I've heard, she began, eyes searching for answers. That seemed to elude her. And in that moment, as time seemed to fracture and echo within the confines of that ambulance, my mother's presence cracked open old wounds, filling every crevice with a torrent of emotion. Whispers of the past collided with the urgent present, weaving an intricate tapestry of pain and reckoning that in the back of my mind swirled the questions. How could she just walk back into our lives now? Did she care enough to fight for Elise? The answer hovered just out of reach, an enigma masked in a shroud of decisions yet to be made. And as Elise's pulse flickered like a candle teetering in the wind, the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily. We may all be fighting for the same lifeline, but the dark truth remained: who would be lost next in this tumultuous web of betrayal and love? The tension in the air thickened, and I felt trapped in a web of swirling feelings, each strand pulling at something deep within me. My mother's arrival was a shockwave, shaking the already frayed edges of my emotional resolve. I had spent so long crafting my world without her, building walls to shield myself from the pain of her absence. Now, those walls felt less like a fortress and more like a cage closing slowly around me. Leave, now. I commanded, my voice stronger than I felt. The words tumbled from my lips, but even as they echoed in the cramped ambulance, a part of me wrestled with the urgency of my plea. Did I truly want her to go, or was I terrified that she might stay? Elise's shallow breaths continued to punctuate the silence, a reminder of what truly mattered, yet here we were caught in the whirlwind of unresolved grievances. My mother's face fell, the color draining ever so slightly, but she did not back down. No, this was not the woman I remembered from my childhood, the one who dissolved under pressure and retreated behind a shadow of shattered dreams. This was a woman who had come back, regardless of the burdens I'd assumed were too heavy to bear. I can help, she said softly, stepping closer, her voice edged with resolve. I know I haven't been around, but I heard about the accident. I need to see Clara and Elise. Her desperation clawed at me, mingling with my own anguish. Help. You walked out when we needed you the most. What do you think you can do now? The anger bubbled to the surface, and I could feel the collective gaze of everyone around absorb my words. James was quiet, observing, his face a mix of confusion and conflict. Emma glanced between the two of us, processing the emotional eruption before her. Worst of all, Liam stood near the end of the gurney, the silent witness to a pact one I never intended to make. None of us are here to discuss the past, Clara. My mother pressed, her eyes glinting with something that steadied my flaring rage. I need you to listen. We have to focus on helping Elise. A flash of pain crossed my mother's face that mirrored my own, a poignant reminder of shared grief over what was at stake. It sliced through our heated exchange, cutting through the noise and drawing my attention back to the fragile girl in the ambulance, a life teetering on the edge of darkness. You think I care about what happened years ago? I whispered, voice shaking. Every moment you spent walking away from us pushed me to build something better for me and Clara, something you'll never understand. I'm here now, she insisted, stepping closer, her voice imbued with an urgency that seemed genuine. Elise is family. This is our chance, don't you see? We can bring her back, and maybe we can begin to heal. A grueling silence encased the small space, and I felt a flicker of hope, quick as a wink, before it was drowned by a wave of doubt. Did healing truly begin this way? This blend of pain and possibility? I dared a glance at the medic, his brows furrowed as he continued with the work, pushing aside our emotional turmoil with the precision of a surgeon. But then, a flickering gasp erupted from Elise, drawing my focus once more. Her eyelids fluttered, the slight rise and fall of her chest betrayed the tenuous grip she had on life. A rush surged through me, a mix of hope and dread as her consciousness seemed to wobble, caught between realms. Stay with us, Elise. Fight back. I urged, squeezing her hand, wishing desperately for her to feel my conviction. The ambulance surged forward once more, jolting us into motion, snapping my concentration back to the battle waging among us. James started speaking softly to my mother, and without intending to, I strained to catch snippets, his tone reassuring. Mom, you didn't call to check on Clara. You've just returned. What do you want from us now? The tremor in his voice revealed a vulnerability that shattered my own. The weight of our circumstances tossed us all into a storm, and with every word exchanged, I could see the fractures forming where tasks should be. Rooted in love and acceptance. But then, I nearly missed it. Elise's eyes fluttered open, searching. They locked onto mine, and for a moment, the world around us faded. Her voice emerged, hardly a whisper but powerful nonetheless, Clara. James. Mom. The room fell silent, tension turning to anticipation, and just like that, I grasped desperately for Elise, for what she represented everything I feared losing. Stay with us, Elise, I said, even as a dreadful tremor of uncertainty rippled through my chest at the sight of her haunted eyes. We're right here. And with those words, a fragment of light flickered back into existence among the entwined fates of our tangled lives. But as her presence solidified, so too did the unease lining my mother's face, twisting with something darker, something I dared not confront yet lingered at the back of my mind. A truth, once veiled, seemed to inch closer. What secrets had my mother woven into the fabric of our family that might make everything unravel once more? As Elise's grip tightened on my hand, I felt the ground shift beneath us, threatening to take the path unseen. The ambulance's interior rattled against the asphalt, each bump in the road translating into a new wave of unease that clawed at my chest. I refused to look away from Elise's fragile frame, her pale skin glistening under the harsh lights, while my mother stood beside me, her anxiety palpable. Please, just let her breathe, I whispered, focusing every ounce of my being on Elise, willing her to sense my presence, to pull back from the brink. For the first time in years, I clung to hope, a flickering flame amid a storm of uncertainty. Clara, don't, my mother's voice broke through my entreaties. We need to move on. She is in good hands now. But the intensity of my gaze remained unbroken, searching for the familiar gleam in Elise's eyes, a beacon I wasn't ready to lose. I felt my mother's hand brush against my arm gently, but I flinched, the unexpected tenderness sending shivers down my spine. I know it's hard, she continued, her voice low and firm. But we need to stay focused on Elise. For her sake. James shifted beside me, tapping a finger against his knee rhythmically. I could sense his turmoil bleeding through the air. The cryptic unspoken truths woven into our history made it impossible for any of us to breathe easy. Your presence doesn't make anything better, I finally muttered, unable to hide my frustration. You weren't here before, and now you expect us to just what? Embrace you again? As if nothing happened. Nothing can ever be the same, my mother replied, her voice tremulous but sincere. But I am trying. I expend every ounce of energy to mend the mistakes of my past. Let me help you. Her desperation clawed at me, almost persuading, as I replayed the memories of times I had hoped she would come back, times I had waited endlessly by the door. Each fleeting moment felt like a cruel joke now, a phantom of the family I had once envisioned. Then, Elise gave a sudden jerk, breaking the cycle of somber thoughts, her fingers tightening around mine. "Clara, it hurts," she whispered, her voice rasping out like a late-night radio signal breaking into static. "Stay with me, sweet girl," I pleaded, my voice trembling as I brushed the damp hair off her forehead, battling the tears threatening to drown my resolve. Panic surged through me, the fear of losing her was a specter that had haunted me for too long. "It's going to be okay," I insisted, wishing to capture the light that shimmered within her. "Hold on tight. You have to fight." The medic glanced in our direction, gratitude flickering across his face for my words, and I realized our roles were now intertwined. The emotional lifeline I had once thought foreign was weaving back together in unexpected ways. But the sirens wailed louder in a different way, an ominous foreboding that crept into my heart. I turned back to my mother, my voice steady. "And what do you expect us to do next? Lay our souls bare so you can pick at the pieces of our broken family?" She hesitated, pain etching deeper lines on her face. "No, Clara, please. I don't want to cause you any more harm. All of this scares me. I don't want to lose you again," but the words faltered, but then, she leaned closer, her breath catching. "I have secrets, Clara. Things I've kept buried for so long." Before she could finish, another surge of energy ripped through Elise, a shudder swallowing her small body as panic pulsed between us all. "Elise!" I shouted, gripping her hand harder, and immediately my mother jumped into action. "We should move her to the hospital. She needs additional stabilization," the medic directed, his voice crisp against the waves of emotion crashing upon us. Time blurred as we transitioned to the emergency room. Elise's fragile pulse became the metronome marking the rhythm of our frantic hearts. I stepped back, retreating into a corner, overwhelmed. Anxiety surged within me, igniting a crisis I couldn't quell. "Clara," James murmured, drifting closer, his eyes scanning for something I wasn't ready to confront. "You're stronger than this. You have to hold on for Elise." "But what about my own pain? The wounds my mother's presence had pried open were still raw." I shot James a glance filled with unspoken questions, the hesitance of allowing another to carry the weight of my heart. Instead, I merely nodded, desperately clutching the hope that both Elise and I could emerge whole from this catastrophe. In moments of stillness, I found the flickers returning to my mind, memories unwinding alongside my thoughts. The sound of laughter from family dinners overshadowed by ghostly reminders of bitter arguments. My mother's absence grew heavy, and it all felt tainted, laced with echoes of dreams turned into ashes, threatening to shatter. But as we were pulled into the swirl of sterile chaos, my mother's presence sat between us like a specter, strength and weakness woven into one, a life only half-lived, tethered to what remained. As whispers of urgency crescendoed around us, a chilling thought gripped me. I didn't merely fear for Elise's life. Buried within the chaos was an unrevealed truth that tied us all together, begging to be unveiled. I was left with an irresistible pull on my heart, a sense that whatever came next would shatter the fragments of what held my family into a myriad of possibilities. Would I find the strength to confront them? Or would the darkness reclaim me one last time? Everything began to feel like it was slipping through my fingers as uncertainty loomed ahead, leaving me at the brink of a precipice where the past and future twisted into one. Then the doctor emerged from behind the bead curtain, and my heart dropped. The look on his face promised answers I wasn't ready to hear. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room glared down, startlingly bright against the cascading shadows of fear that cloaked the waiting area. I felt my breath hitch when the doctor stepped into the light, his face solemn yet flickering with a hint of uncertainty. There was an unsettling silence that enveloped us, a held breath ripe with the weight of unspoken truths. "Clara, James, your friend," he began, but the end of his sentence dissolved into a swirl of muted chaos surrounding us. I could barely focus, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm that drowned out the mundane clatter of voices and rushing feet. The world felt distant, hazy, as if I were submerged beneath the crushing weight of water. Elise had always been the one to anchor me, her laughter a gentle balm that could stitch together the jagged pieces of my heart. But now, she lay broken and frail, and I was utterly lost in this space between hope and despair. The doctor cleared his throat, and I forced myself to lift my gaze to meet his eyes, searching for any glimmer of reassurance. "She is stable for now, but she needs an emergency procedure to monitor her vital signs more closely. We need to be vigilant, the next 24 hours are critical." My mother gasped softly beside me, her hand flying to her mouth, and I could feel the tendrils of fear wrapping tighter around my chest, squeezing away the air I desperately needed. "How critical?" I managed, my voice sounding small, like a whisper lost in a storm. "It's difficult to say at this point," he replied, his gaze never wavering from mine. "We'll do everything we can, but the following will set the course. You should prepare for the possibility of complications." Fixing my stare fiercely on him, I refused to let the truth land. "You have to save her. You have to," I repeated, the desperation flooding my words as if chanting could alter reality. "Clara, we're going to do our best," he assured, stepping back, but I sensed the faint resignation in his tone. Before my stomach had the chance to churn with despair, my mother turned, her expression suddenly fierce and determined, a reflection of the woman I had half forgotten but craved to remember. "I want to help," she declared, anchoring every ounce of conviction behind her words. "I can't change the past, but if there is anything I can do now, just tell me, please." James placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip tight as if hoping to bind her courage in place, allowing me a moment of clarity amid the turmoil. "You're here for a reason, Clara," he murmured, though his eyes glistened with unshed uncertainty, but I couldn't shake the hostility simmering beneath my skin. "What reason?" "To play a savior in a narrative that had already twisted so far away from you." My self-control slipped, the anger bubbling over, unfiltered. James stepped closer, his injury writing raw lines of worry across his face. "No, Clara, listen. We're all in this together, whether we like it or not." I stepped back, away from their embraces, both the warmth of my mother's intentions and James' support. Those comforts felt foreign, alien to the storm enveloping me. My heart remained chained to Elise, and while chaos swirled around us, couldn't they see my fight was not against her recovery but with emotions I didn't want to confront? "Clara," my mother reached for me again, but I flinched deeper into my thoughts. Memories clawed and rattled against my consciousness, waiting to break free. I had believed I had carved out boundaries that would protect our fragile reunion, yet here she stood, vulnerable and desperate for reconnection, a life tethered precariously to the one Elise had drawn me into. Then, the chaos abruptly pivoted when another doctor walked in, his authoritative presence demanding attention. "We need families to follow us to the waiting area. We'll bring you updates as soon as possible. Please give us some space to work." A crushing sense of realization washed over me. The reality of Elise's situation loomed larger than my emotions, inexorably drawing me toward the waiting room steeped in sterile light and obligatory silence. All the reasons I kept pushing my mother away, all the walls I conspired to keep high, I felt them crack under the weight of what truly mattered. Elise, strong and fragile, would need all the support she could muster, but could I shift my burden enough to share it with those I had half cursed? I wanted to scream that I could navigate this tumult solo, who needed them when I was her best friend, her saving anchor. Yet the ache in my chest whispered of solidarity and love, two sentiments tied intricately across the brink of despair. As I turned to follow the doctor, I felt a tug on my arm, James grounding me again. "Clara, look." His voice softened, and I turned, his expression a tentative blend of affection and apprehension. "You're not alone, regardless of what has happened. We're all here to help." A knot formed in my throat as I allowed myself a moment of vulnerability, seeing the frantic worry etched into his features. He was right, the stakes had escalated. This wasn't about buried grudges or long-forgotten heartaches, it was about Elise, her voice just at the edge of my thoughts, calling me to rise above the weight of all our history. With my heart racing, I nodded, unsure of the path ahead, yet determined to navigate through this vivid chaos together. The resentment simmering in my veins felt tied to something greater. I had a choice to mend beyond the original hurt, to move toward healing, the doctor nodded for us to enter the waiting room, and I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. Just then, however, the doors swung open, and a familiar figure stepped into the room, a face I never expected to see again. My breath caught as the reality of the day morphed yet again, unveiling layers of hidden connections I wasn't ready to face. The sudden intrusion of the figure into the waiting room shattered the fragile bubble of my emotions. I froze, grounding my feet into the smooth surface of the floor, as though anchoring myself against the storm of feelings ripping through me. It was Sophie, the girl from years ago who once made her presence known through her aloofness and privilege, but now, all the barriers of wealth and status seemed to slip away, leaving an authenticity that shook me. Her entrance was abrupt, a whirlwind of emotions in a tailored suit. If her expression was anything to go by, the storm inside her mirrored my own, panic woven with determination, reflecting the urgency of our shared circumstances. She scanned the room, taking in the gray walls and flickering lights before settling her gaze on me. It felt as if our pasts collided, each memory a thunderous echo in the sterile silence. "Clara?" The tremor in her voice was palpable, an unexpected shift from the fierce confidence she once wore like a cloak. "What happened to Elise?" The question struck with unyielding force. I didn't want to answer, didn't want to unravel those fragile threads that held my heart together. For a fleeting moment, resentment whispered cruelly in my ear, an old companion I thought I could push aside like a forgotten toy. But then I noticed the raw concern in her eyes, an honesty that transcended our fractured history. She's in surgery." The words fell from my lips heavy with despair, as though each one was a stone dragging my spirit lower. "They're monitoring her condition. She's stable," but Sophie took a step closer, her presence oddly soothing in the chaos that enveloped me. "I heard about the accident the moment it happened," she confessed, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I came as soon as I could. I don't know how I can help." James's grip tightened on my arm, a silent reminder of the solidarity we had just begun to forge. I turned to him, unsure what to say, but something shifted in his expression, an unspoken understanding blossoming between the three of us. It was fragile, like the hope I was trying to muster. "Look, it's not about how you can help," I said, fighting past the layers of anxiety. "What matters is that you care. That you're actually here." Sophie nodded, and for a brief moment, the walls I had crafted around my heart felt less like a fortress and more like an intricate tapestry of intersectionality. Old grievances began to weave together with the current reality, creating a kaleidoscope of emotions. "I can't believe it's come to this," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "After everything, all the years. Life has a way of reminding us what really matters," I murmured, feeling the weight of my past decisions pressing against my chest. Could we possibly forge a new dynamic from these recalled memories? The waiting room felt charged with unspoken connections and remnants of the lives we had once mapped out, lost in a fog of pride and uncertainty. Somehow, here and now, a flicker of hope ignited, spurred on by the anguish of our friend's condition. It breathed a new life into us, albeit frail, an unmistakable thread binding us together in a shared mission. But then, as if we had spoken the commitment into existence, the oppressive silence shattered with a shrill ringing. A nurse stepped through the double doors, her composure unwavering, yet her eyes held the weight of heavy revelations. "Clara, we need to speak with you and your family." Every instinct within me recoiled. The tight knot in my throat felt like it was strangling the last remains of my imagination. Whatever the nurse had to say couldn't be good, and the blast of dread surged through the air like static electricity. I exchanged fearful glances with James and Sophie. This was the critical moment, our fragile hope felt underscored by an unraveling abyss, and trusting my mother and the depths of the uncertainty ahead, I followed the nurse. "Elise's surgery was successful," she began, each word echoing like distant thunder. "However, there are complications that we need to discuss." The room faded, leaving only the faint thumps of my heart, each beat a countdown. "Complications?" I echoed, lightheaded, as dread curled around my insides. "We suspect there may have been underlying conditions we were unaware of," she continued, her expression grave. It's important you prepare for every possible outcome. Something deep inside me shattered, scattering fragments of what I believed was a straightforward path to healing. I simply couldn't comprehend life without Elise, her laughter filling the gaps of my silence, her kindness reminding me of hope even in the darkest moments. As the nurse explained further, a wrenching thought clawed at my psyche: would we lose her before we truly had a chance to bridge the gaps between us, to weave new ties that bound our histories together? Mere complications, I whispered to myself, the words tasting bitter as each syllable landed. A chance meeting between fate and choices made long ago danced before my eyes. Then came the very scream of memory, the echo of the last argument I'd had with Elise about apology and betrayal, filled with delivered promises and unfulfilled dreams. Fragments of those conversations tumbled in my mind as I stood on the precipice of loss, a sudden realization dawning upon me that the stakes had never been higher, and the truth may not just lie in her recovery but also in what lay ahead with Sophie and James. My mind spiraled into a frenzied introspection, where all those moments I desperately sought to reconcile flashed by me faster than I could absorb them. Friendships replaced by regret, jarring silence filled by absence. Just as my heartbeat synchronized to the weight of grief, a resolute sound flared, a phone vibrating vigorously in my pocket, a call I had missed in all this chaos. I fumbled for it, anticipation racing through me. What if it held answers to questions I had only begun to ask? I glanced at the screen, and my stomach dropped. The name glaring back at me sent my world asunder: Theo. The very mention of his name resurfaced threads of a tumultuous past that clashed dangerously with all I thought I had known. Wrapped in the turmoil of facing what I had lost, could I now take on the remnants of who I had once been? In the labyrinth of uncertainty between the flickering light above and the shadow of my friend on the brink, could I unveil the truth still buried beneath the weight of our intertwined stories? The world around me dimmed as I stood locked in a battle with the memories that Theo's name had ignited. His laughter, once a source of joy, now felt like a distant echo, drowned in a cacophony of guilt and unresolved emotions. How could I even consider answering that call when the enormity of Elise's situation loomed over us like a heavy cloud? Barely able to catch my breath, I turned away from the nurse and stepped into the muted hallway, desperate for solitude. I pressed the green button, my fingers trembling as I raised the phone to my ear. "Hello? Clara," his voice broke through the static, smooth yet steeped in something deeper, a mix of urgency and fear. "I heard about Elise. I'm so sorry." The words felt as if they were wrapped in a warmth that defied the chill in the air around me. "What do you want, Theo?" I snapped, needing to distance myself from the fragile thread that connected our past. I want to help." There was a softness in his tone, but I struggled to accept it. "I heard you were at the hospital. If there's anything you need help." My voice climbed in pitch as anger bubbled to the surface. "What do you know about help? You walked away when things got tough. You think a casual signal means you can just step back in? Clara, please, listen." His voice softened, grounding me momentarily. "I didn't walk away. I thought I was protecting you, protecting us from a world we weren't ready to face. But now, things are different. I know I messed up, and I'm sorry. I should have what?" I interrupted, feeling the tempest of emotions swirl within me. "Should have stayed. Should have tried harder. Nothing you say can change the past." Silence enveloped us for a moment, and I could hear the hum of the hospital machines in the distance, hurried footsteps echoing through sterile hallways. "Elise is in surgery. We don't know how this is going to turn out," I finally said, the tremor in my voice betraying the stoicism I desperately tried to cling to. "And now, it feels like everything is unraveling. I can be there. I can help," he began, but I cut him off again. "You think standing around will change anything? I can't do this right now, Theo." My voice broke, and I pressed a hand to my forehead, fighting against tears that threatened to spill. "Clara, wait, I can't." My heart raced as I ended the call, the ache of unresolved feelings clawing at my insides. Against the stark hospital walls, I felt even more isolated. Each moment stretched, tethered to the uncertainty of how long Elise would hold on against this tidal wave of complications. I leaned against the cold wall, attempting to catch my breath. The encounter with Theo rippled through my thoughts, layering the existing pain with new complexities. But it was Sophie's quiet approach that grounded me in the chaotic moment, her footsteps slow, almost hesitant, as she approached. "Hey," she said softly, concern pressing in her voice as she studied my face. "You okay?" "Not really," I admitted, wiping away the stray tears that betrayed my facade. "It's so much, and I don't know how I'm supposed to handle it all." She moved closer, her presence gentler than I had remembered. "You don't have to handle it alone, you know. I'm here. For Elise, for you, for whatever comes next." The sincerity in her voice shattered the last barriers I had erected. I nodded, allowing her to draw me into a fragile embrace. It wasn't a relationship born from the past, but rather one cobbled together by the weight of our shared grief. In that moment, we were united, two lost souls searching for light in a darkened world, yet as the comforting swell of her warmth enveloped me, my phone trembled against my palm again. And with a quick glance, I saw the name appear once more: Theo. That familiar dread settled once more in my gut. "What do you think he wants?" Sophie murmured, her voice a low hum in my ear as I hesitated. "I don't know," I whispered. "But I don't think it's about Elise anymore. I think it's about us." "Us?" Her brows furrowed in confusion as she pulled back slightly. "Yeah," I said, my heart racing. "It's about unfinished business from another life, and I don't know whether to confront it or bury it deep." "You deserve to confront it," she urged gently, taking my hand in hers, offering the steady support I'd long imagined but never received. I took a deep breath, my heart thundering in my chest once more. "I think I need to answer it." But just as I was about to answer the call, the double doors swung open again, and a doctor stepped into view. The air grew thick with anticipation, something in his eyes radiating urgency and a desire to share news. Sophie and I exchanged looks, uncertainty rippling between us. "Clara," she said softly, "whatever happens, I'm here." And as the doctor approached, I realized my entire world was poised on the edge of a cliff, laying bare not just Elise's fate, but the tangled threads of my relationships and the choices that filled the chasms of my heart. "Clara," the doctor began, his gaze steady yet solemn, "we need to talk about Elise's condition." At that moment, the heaviness of everything converged, a wild, chaotic storm threatening to engulf us all, leaving me on the precipice of revelation as the truth hung like a shadow, uncertain and menacing, above us. The doctor's words fell like lead into the air. I braced myself, heart racing, my emotions a turbulent storm crashing against the shores of my resolve. "Elise has stabilized," he said, yet even within that flicker of hope, his expression told me we were still a long way from safety. "But..." The pause sent chills racing down my spine. "There are complications," he continued, "that make it critical for you to understand what this means moving forward." Each word felt as though it were chiseling away at my heart. I could barely absorb the gravity of his message. My thoughts swirled through the haze of fear as I glanced at Sophie and James, their faces a mirror of my own panic. "What kind of complications?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling, barely maintaining its steadiness. "Due to the circumstances surrounding her collapse, we need to monitor her organ functions closely. There's a risk of long-term damage," he replied, his gaze unwavering as he gauged my reaction. "The fact that she is breathing, though, that's a good sign. It means she's fighting." Fighting. The word hung in the silence that surrounded us, reverberating with a weight I could barely accept. I thought of Elise, the girl who had breathed life into my heavy days, who had filled my world with light and laughter. Somehow, hearing she was fighting made the night feel like a battlefield, a war we hadn't anticipated. A sob clawed its way up my throat, and I felt Sophie's hand tighten around mine, her warmth anchoring me amid the cascading waves of despair. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice shaky as I looked into the doctor's eyes, searching for answers, for a way to traverse this uncharted territory. "What does this mean for her future?" The doctor's expression softened slightly. "For now, we need to maintain hope. It could mean a longer recovery, therapy, and maybe even more surgeries. But we won't know more until we have a clearer picture. You can support her through this, and that's crucial. Support. It sounded simple yet daunting, especially with the weight of history threading through our connection. Suddenly, a sudden tide of memories rushed back, the laughter and the moments shared, the fragile yet unbreakable bond we had nurtured over the years. How could I offer support when my own heart was so tethered to unresolved feelings and fears? We'd like to keep you updated as we proceed, the doctor said, breaking my spiraling thoughts. You can meet with her soon after the procedure. For now, try to rest while we work. Rest? I echoed, feeling every nerve in me pulsate with anxiety. It felt impossible to rest when Elise was fighting for her life. But then, buried beneath the layers of fear, I felt something shift within me. A flicker of determination ignited in my chest. It mingled with the memories of our laughter and confidence in each other. There was nothing that could rip that connection away. That I glanced at James and Sophie, their expressions unwavering in solidarity. We'll be here for her, I declared, the words spilling from me with unexpected fervor. Whatever comes next, we will face it together. The doctor nodded, seemingly reassured by the strength reflected in our united front. And as he walked away, I turned to Sophie, who stood resolute by my side. We should write her a letter, I said, inspired by the idea that our words could form a bridge over the chasm of uncertainty. Tell her everything, how much she means to us. Sophie smiled softly, and although it flickered with fear, there was also a deep understanding of the power behind those words. I'd like that, she replied, her voice hushed yet comforting. As I sat down at a nearby table with James, the weight of the past felt lighter, as if the promise of our commitment to Elise was dissolving the barriers that had previously held us captive. Before we do, can I say something? James said, his voice steady yet tender. I nodded, feeling the warmth of connection swell within me. I think it's vital we share not just our hope for Elise, but the truths we've been hiding from ourselves too. This is our moment to heal. Healing. The word echoed in my mind. At that moment, it became clear to me that this was an opportunity, a chance not just to save a friend but to explore the complexities of our own lives. I glanced at him, the sincerity in his expression igniting something inside me. Every feeling I had tucked away, every disappointment, every harsh word exchanged surfaced, pressing against the edges of my heart. Let us promise to be honest with ourselves and with each other, I whispered, my voice trembling with sincerity. And not let Elise's struggle be in vain. Let us create a new beginning. James nodded slowly, a deep understanding cementing our unspoken pact. A new beginning. It felt exhilarating yet terrifying. But if Elise was courageous enough to fight, then perhaps we too could conjure the strength to face our truths. Sophie joined us closer as we began to craft our letter, the ink flowing through our shared laughter, anecdotes, and even apologies. In the weight of our words, I felt a thawing in my heart. The coldness that had once extended its grip began to release its hold, but then, my phone buzzed again. This time, I hesitated, the conversation with Theo still fresh in my mind. Would I dare answer, risking the fragile moment of solidarity we had just forged? Clara? James called softly, breaking my trance. That I glanced at him, and the warmth of his eyes steadied my hand. I need to take this, I said, my heart racing as I raised the phone to my ear one more time. Theo. Clara, what is happening? He asked, his voice threaded with urgency. I'm at the hospital. I want to be there for Elise. The determination in his tone ignited a spark within me. It was unexpected, yet not unwelcome. You need to understand, we are waiting for news. She is fighting for her life. I'll do whatever it takes to support her, he exclaimed. And that includes being there for you too. The sincerity flowed through the line like a lifeline thrown in turbulent waters. You really mean that? I asked, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest, a hope I harbored cautiously, guarded against disappointment. Absolutely, he replied without hesitation. Whatever you need, I'm in. Just don't shut the door on me. Maybe this is a second chance. A second chance. I had not considered that this empathetic acknowledgement could reshape our narrative. The thought felt dizzying, but there was no time to dwell. I had made a promise to Elise, a commitment to fight for what truly mattered. With the letter still fresh on my mind, I realized I could be honest about everything, my past with Theo, the fears that had lingered through our silence. "Okay," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "We can talk when you arrive. Just hurry." As I hung up, the quiet air felt infused with warmth again, not just for Elise, but for the tangled threads of our shared histories. The hospital walls felt less constricting, and I turned toward Sophie and James. "Let us get this letter to her," I said firmly. As we wrote, laughter flowed again among us, weaving memories and hopes meant to lift the spirit of our dear friend. Each word felt like a testament of our bond, fragile yet full of resilience, sustaining us through the unknown. Then came the moment when we would gather in her hospital room, where the flickering machines accompanied each heartbeat, and we would read our letter aloud, a bridge across all that had once divided us. It was a promise to not just accept the past but to mold it into something that could weather the future, and as the door creaked open, filled with the echoes of our collective hope and truth, I could feel the darkness whisper retreating, a powerful testament that the light of friendship, of connection, would always find a way to rekindle even in its bleakest hour. With every breath, I was learning to embrace the truth for what it was, a tapestry woven of love and regret, connection and separation. And then, from the very depths of despair, an unspoken promise bloomed: nothing would break us now. In that moment, I realized that to truly bring someone back to life was not merely an act of daring but a journey grounded in honesty, vulnerability, and an unwavering belief in second chances. And though the road ahead remained uncertain, I could feel our hearts beating as one, echoing a newfound strength. Together, we would forge a path toward healing, a reminder that love, even amidst the storms, would endure. "Let us do this, for Elise," I whispered, turning my gaze toward my friends, ready to face whatever came next, because sometimes, it's in the most fragile moments that you discover the depth of true strength, and with that strength, the heart dances boldly into the light. The last line of this chapter: yearning to rise anew.